so my name's Helen and this is Neil. I'm a food stylist based in Somerset and Neil is a food photographer.
Today we're going to style a dish and shoot it here in my studio in the Old Mill in Wellington, Somerset.
Yeah, we're going to look at some nice seasonal ingredients. So we're going to cook up a lovely wild mushroom risotto and show you how we create a composition of the dish first and then introduce the food and a couple of tricks of the trade that we use along the way.
Yep, we're going to do a little bit on lighting, a little bit on picking props, and yeah, a few tricks here and there. Probably the first thing we would do before we take the pictures, obviously, is pick a nice surface that we're going to do the shots on. This is a really old door which I picked up at a reclamation yard, in Wells Reclamation Yard actually, so not far from where the festival would have been. And yeah, basically, once that's in position on a couple of old builders' stands, it gives me a nice position that I can get above and shoot down slightly. Today we're going to use flash, which basically replicates your window. So you can do exactly what I'm doing next to a window. I use flash. Basically it gives me a little bit of consistency and it means I can shoot when it's dark outside. So first of all, I bring in this, which basically is like a big piece of tracing paper. And what that's going to do is soften my light even more, so it gives it a really natural feel. You can buy something like this from a haberdashery, sort of piece of muslin or something like that, or ripstop material which you get on kites and things like that. But yeah, that's basically what that is. Or you could probably use greaseproof paper, maybe. Maybe not so big. What I'm going to do now is push a light behind here. What it basically is like a big flashlight which you would get on top of your camera, so it's a bigger version of that, and as you can see, it gives you a really nice soft light.
Okay, so now Neil has got all of his lighting set up initially and chosen the background. Got the risotto on the hob now, just occupying itself. We're going to work together in the absence of a prop stylist. We're going to look through Neil's props, see what we got, have a look at textures, get some nice layers in there, different colours that are complementary with the dish, and sort of work out a composition before we introduce any food at all. So that's what we're going to start with, and we're going to look at getting the chopping board in first.
Yeah.
Okay, so Neil's got a lovely box of chopping boards here of really nice textures, different tones and stuff. So we want something that's quite complementary, but also it's worth bearing in mind we want a little bit of contrast so we can get that layering going.
Yeah, these are my pride and joys, and I think that sits beautifully. Obviously, if we were doing something super clean, we wouldn't be having a rustic board. It would be tiles and marble, etc. But yeah. Today we're going full rustic.
Lovely.
So, yes.
So that's a nice big surface area as well for us to work on, so the dish won't be tight. We've got a nice area that we can also prop in and introduce some fresh ingredients as well. Yeah. So next we would probably go with maybe looking at the bowls and the props that the food actually comes in. So again, we're going for the more neutral rustic tones, but also bearing in mind what's going to be going into the bowl. So we go for quite shallow dishes. We like to call them plols. But it just allows us to have a little bit of colour and texture from the crockery, but also at the end of the day, the main focus needs to be on the food.
What we're going to do is just build it really, and also what we can do, because we're shooting tethered, which means I can get the picture straight away on the screen. We take a picture as we go along to make sure everything's looking good. I focused on the bowl, and with the ability of tether, I can shoot it from here.
Sometimes at this stage you just introduce an element in the middle of the crockery just so it helps Neil to be able to focus on something as well.
Yep, so take another shot. There we go. So I'm keeping the depth of field quite minimal, just to really focus on the food and try to blur out everything in the background. We're going to add some more things afterwards, It just gives it a nice feel as well. That's where we are at the moment. I'd probably zoom in just to see where my focus is. I'm focused kind of here. It's going out of focus in the front, out of focus in the back. And now we're going to prop it up a little bit more with some more textures. Linen's nice. So
Nice complementary colour.
nice complementary colour. Look at that. So it just adds another texture.
We often say about building a story, so obviously the concentration is on the food, but putting props in that make sense to the story, maybe not silly props we sort of have to rein ourselves in sometimes, and they don't make sense. They might look nice, but they maybe don't make sense to the dish, so it's important about sort of paring it back and choosing props that are appropriate for the dish.
Don't put a fork in a soup shop.
Exactly.
So again, we're just taking a shot as we go along, just to see how we're building that up. It's nice to get, lots of people fold up linen and put it in really neatly. I quite like it to be a bit messy. As you'll see later on, things will get messy. Okay, so what we're going to do now, Helen will tell you.
We've got a lovely pan. Obviously, Neil knows a lot more about this than me, but you have to look at props and maybe consider things like what side the light's coming in on, whether it's reflective, because that can be an absolute nightmare. So quite often we have nicely battered saucepans and metals that help us with that. But Neil will probably guide me as to where's best suited for these sorts of things with light direction, because obviously that's his forte.
I know exactly where that's going to go.
To
Okay, so we don't want it to be the focus of the shot. We want it to be just in the background. I would say there. We'll probably have a bit of risotto in there. So that's what we're getting at the moment. So again, focus is on the dish. In the background, we're going to have that pan as if it's just been scooped out. So it's quite dark, it's quite moody. I quite like that. But as lots of people will probably know already, but I'll tell you, a piece of white card is really handy. Because if we wanted to lighten that up, we just do that and that just bounces the light back in. It might be that we do that, it might be that we won't, but that'll probably come just at the end when we put the food in. I'll take a picture, think actually it could do with a little bit more light, and then we'll stick that back in there. Okay?
Perfect.
Great. So we got a couple spoons.
Got a couple of spoons there. Again, not reflective.
Tarnished,
nice
old.
and tarnished and old and rustic, keeping in the theme as well, and obviously helps us with the lighting as well.
There you go. I'm going to put a couple of spoons in there. Do another test shot. Okay. What helps there as well is that the spoons are on the left-hand side and away from the light, so they're not shining really badly. And I don't want them to really show up that much. We just want them to give an idea. I'd never share a bowl with anyone, to be honest. But
2 spoons for you.
Yeah, 2 spoons for me.
As you can obviously see, we've probably gone about 5 minutes now and introduced no food whatsoever. So you can appreciate that, you know, things start to deteriorate quite quickly when it comes to food. So we like to get the composition really solid. I mean, there might come changes once the foods are in and we introduce the ingredients, but generally we sort of, we get to this point, don't we, before anything, and then we know the food looks fresh, and that gives us, you know, a bit more time to play around once the food is in set as well. Right,
I think that's probably it. All we're going to do is introduce some raw ingredients in the background, as in the mushrooms, because they are so
beautiful.
Yeah. Look at these beautiful
So we've got
mushrooms.
a lovely range of textures, sizes, colours. Obviously things like these are beautiful to obviously have in shot, but you do have to bear in mind, again, the composition. You don't want to overload the shot. At the end of the day, it's all about the focus in the middle of the bowl. So it's all to enhance the image rather than to detract. So so we sort of put some in. They might work, they might not work, but we'll see.
Got a nice little bit of parmesan there, which we could maybe add into the shot. Again, not a key, not to be too much in the picture. Maybe back there, once we grate it a little bit onto the risotto, we're going to put a few mushrooms in that back. Yeah, I think we can probably be quite generous. These are lovely. These ones, aren't they?
Good texture. So always look at like colour, composition, textures. It all adds to the dish. It's everything that you want to see in a plate of food as well. So try and get all those elements in shot. And for the minute, quite often what we'll do is pop them in, see how they look. Neil will probably move them. But it's about working as a team and seeing what we've got, making it look natural.
That's absolutely fine. But what I would do,
go on then,
is just add in.
Yeah, they're nice ones.
I do like these.
Yeah, they're great.
They're like not of this world, are they? Okay, maybe we'll just.
And quite often at this point, although I've got the risotto ready to go and it's just on the hob, just keep them warm. Quite often this is when I'm preparing the food, so that's why Neil's quite hands-on with this sort of thing. So it's quite good having a good relationship with the photographer, especially if you don't have a prop stylist.
So we're kind of nearly there for where we want the shot. I actually, looking now, I didn't see that Parmesan looks a bit awful there, so maybe we'll bring it over onto the right-hand side. Yeah, what do you reckon? Okay. There we go. Try that. Okay.
Brilliant.
All good?
So now I think we're ready for food. Okay, so now we've got a strong composition, it's time to introduce the food. So like I said before, we do this last minute, so it keeps nice and fresh. It doesn't start to deteriorate, so thank you. So we'll remove the holding mushroom. So in here I've got a big bowl. Always cook a few extra portions for this sort of thing, so you have a bit of, a bit of ingredients to play around with.
So you can eat it as well?
Oh yeah, obviously. So we've got leftovers as well. I always cook elements, and in this case, the key element is the mushroom. So I always cook extra elements on the side as well. So as much as the recipe might look nice, sometimes it needs a bit of enhancement. And the idea is to tune the focus on the special ingredients, and this case is the mushroom. So I've done a couple of extras for the side. So this is a case of getting the, and quite often, less is more in this case. So I would never recommend pouring in anything into a dish. Always spoon in, so you have, a bit of a control over how much you pop in. You want to get those textures around the outside. So the idea is that you sort of spread it out. It's not in one massive pile. And like I said, once you've got some in there, then the idea is you can start introducing the extra elements. You start picking out the nice bits of, the nice bits of mushroom that are going to create great texture. And that one's got like a nice shape on there, so you've got good texture there. Like I say, you probably go for a little bit more, just so it doesn't look too propped. So sort of put a bit more ingredients on the top. We want all the different varieties of mushrooms as well, so sort of pop those on the top. And you quite often want nice recognisable shapes, so these kind of things are really good to pop on the top because people can really define them as being mushrooms, so that's quite important. And then you've got a little bit of scraps that you can sort of texture it up with as well.
Just as we're going along as well, I'm spotting things like the spoons are too far out, so we're just hiding those a little bit.
So I'm just going to pop a bit more of the risotto in the pan as well, so it's all about building up the story so it makes sense. You don't need too much. Again, thinking about textures, so I'm just going to go back to the main dish. Just break up the edges. It's nice to see the individual bits of pearl barley and it not look too staged in that respect. We're going to dirty up that spoon.
Dirty up the spoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep
I
it
think we'll put it in the pan.
Keep it in the pan.
But
so again, you want to make all the props believable. Okay. So all our dishes as well, I will season at the end. Seasoning is a great way of breaking up block colours. So if anything's particularly white, it's good to break it up with some cracked black pepper. Even salt will do its job at breaking up colour. So that's quite important. And also if you use any herbs, They're great for sort of giving a bit more texture, but they are all things that happen at the last minute once we're happy with the composition.
And we're probably going to grate a little bit
Yeah.
of, I was going to say the Italian pronunciation, but I'll just say Parmesan. Now the shot, see where we are. You have to be careful with things like Parmesan or cheese because it's obviously very white and it hasn't got much detail on it. So
if you want to pull it back, then yeah.
Yeah, you just a bit of black pepper on it, breaks it up as well. And or we can use several things in there, bit of oil or something.
So I always buy the grinders so you can do it fresh. Quite often pre-ground black pepper is too powdery, so it's quite good to be able to do it yourself, and quite often these have a dial on them anyways to how coarse that you want it. But as you can see, that completely changes the bright white of the Parmesan.
Shooting as we go along. Now's the time that Parmesan is going to start to go a little bit wilty, isn't it, Helen?
Yeah.
So
we haven't got, yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, when the hot elements go in, then you've
Yeah.
got to start sort of picking up the speed a little bit. So
Okay, good.
bit of parsley. So any kind of green herb or even vegetables and things like that, salads, last minute with all of these, just simply because they just deteriorate. I mean, these days aren't hot, so it's not too much of a problem, but it's more about the food. So once it goes on the hot food, then it does start to deteriorate a little bit. So
Let's just try.
not too much.
Not too much.
Bit on the deck.
Okay. So I'm zooming in really to see that I've got the detail there, and I'm looking, and at this point I would think to myself, I really like that, but just in my mind, just to satisfy my curiosity, I'm going to put a piece of white in there to reflect some back in. Now you can obviously rest that on a clamp or a tin of beans. I usually like to just put my hand in and give it a go. And if it looks better, then I'll put it in there permanently. So I'm going to swap between both to compare. I think. What do you like, Helen?
Well, I know you're
indecisive.
going to side with being on the moody side.
I'm going to side with being on the moody
Yeah,
side.
I think it works with the dish. I think it
Okay.
works with the ingredients. So, but just looking at that composition, this is my favourite tool. Just a simple paintbrush. It can be a prodder, a poker, a brush if you need to put on oil, if you need to sort of glisten up ingredients and things. But you're just looking at basic things like stray herbs, if you need to break up areas that are looking a bit cloggy. Still looks natural, but nice and tidy and appetising. Okay, I'm out of frame.
Okay, one more time. Okay, so that there is our finished dish, and if I was ever giving a picture to a client, I would take more than I need in the picture. I mean, I've zoomed out there, it's a nice picture, it shows all the ingredients, but sometimes what the main focus will be is obviously the dish. So it allows you to crop in on the dish, and it allows you to have the wider shot as well.
So there we go, that's our final dish.
Thank you for joining us.